Good morning. This is Natalie Gilly with the Bicycle Alliance Minnesota. Welcome to the Minnesota Bike Walk Leadership Network webinar. So we have two speakers today, and I'll go ahead and start sharing my screen so that you can take a look at the slideshow for today. So this morning we're going to be discussing the topic of bike maintenance, service and repair in Walker and Fergus Falls. And we have some wonderful presentations that Jean and Paul have prepared for us today. So we'll go ahead and just first start with an overview of the agenda, and then we'll have everyone welcome themselves here through the chat box. So as we're queuing this up, if you're looking on the right-hand side of your screen, you'll be able to see the chat box and introduce. So today we'll have you introduce your name and your location, and I have a question you can also answer in the chat box. I'm going to discuss just a couple of upcoming webinars that you might be interested in joining, and then we'll welcome Paul and I and Jean Bowman to provide their presentations. So who's here today? If you could go to the chat box and put your name, your location, and then this is a question that's kind of leading into the next topic we'll be covering in the month of June. Which MnDOT district do you live in? And bonus if you know someone in your MnDOT district office. So this is just kind of putting you on the spot to think about this and think about if you know your MnDOT person and if you know which district you're in. So we'll go ahead and just check in with the chat box there as you guys are typing in your answers to that. So. The upcoming webinars for BikeMN, we have a couple coming up here. And as you know, this Minnesota Bike Walk Leadership Network meets on the third Wednesday of the month from 11:30 to 12:30 via Zoom. And in June 17th from 11:30 to 12:30, the topic will be Bike Facilities Design Manual. So that's kind of the leading question in our chat box. In July, it'll be on the 15th, and in August on the 19th. So those are save the dates, and I'll introduce more information about the topics when we get a little closer to those dates. There is also a Safe Routes to School Network webinar that happens that many of you that are on this webinar may also participate in. Jill Chamberlain is the host of that webinar. And coming up in June on the 11th, they'll be discussing speed zone and speed limits. And on the 9th, school district transportation. So many of you may have joined on the 14th last week to discuss safe routes to school in the time of COVID. So that was something that just recently happened. And then thank you to everyone who participated in the Bike Anywhere Day. So that happened recently as well. So as you know, it's Bike Month and happening maybe a little bit differently this year. But Bike Anywhere Day was welcoming and inviting everyone to still ride your bikes and participate. So before we get into the presentation by Paul, I just want to go back to the chat box and welcome the people that are on the call today. So we have CJ Linder from the metro area here, Ted Deppner from BikeMN, Sydney Winters from Mankato, District 7, Cassie Greenwood from Olmsted County Public Health, Rochester, District 6, Jean Bowman, Fergus Falls, MnDOT District 3, I mentioned CJ, St. Paul, Metro, Nick Mason, Metro, Mackenzie Turner, Bargain, Beth Kellestad, City of Northfield, District 6. Just kind of scrolling through here, Wayne Hurley, Fergus Falls, MnDOT District 4, Steve Jorgensen, Rochester, Bob Dunn, Elgin, Minnesota, Danny Gardner, Rochester, District 6, Judy Jones, Bloomington, District 5, Katie, Minneapolis, Metro, Ted, Minneapolis, Metro, Maya. We have almost our full BikeMN staff today on here, so we welcome all of those folks to support you guys in all of this work. Andrea from Cook County, Cheryl Lee, Thief Rivers, River Falls, District 2, Jane Butzer, Detroit Lakes, District 4, and she is self-identified as a MnDOT person. Myron, St. Olaf College, Northfield, Janelle from Fergus Falls, D4, Mark Gang from Bloomington, Katie Katowski from Moorhead, D4, Carrie from Wahoo Adventures, White Bear Lake, Luke from Jackson, Cottonwood County, D7, Lindsay Nelson, Scott County Public Health in the Metro, Tina Moen, Wabasha, Dorian Greeley, Metro, Kim Vickery, Minneapolis, and Tina mentions that she's from D6. So welcome to all the participants today. We have a great crew from around the state. This is a statewide network of leaders who are joining to share ideas and strategies about how we can make Minnesota more bicycle friendly. So we appreciate that you've taken the time to be here and be part of this webinar today. So I'm very excited to introduce our speakers today. Our first speaker we have is Paul Nye from Walker, Minnesota. And you may know him from Backstreet Bicycle Service and Repair in Walker. Maybe you've rode your bike along the Paul Bunyan Trail and stopped there, and possibly even gone to the bike shop itself. He started out as a graduate from the United Bicycle Institute in Ashland, Oregon, and was a journalist for 20 years and is also a musician. And so it's really, really cool to have him on the call today. He's going to chat a little bit about Backstreet Bicycle and the local and regional advocacy efforts around what they're providing at their shop and Walker and the Leach Lake area as a destination for cycling. So welcome to the webinar, Paul.
Howdy, howdy. It's good to see all the people there. Yeah, I live in Walker. My name is Paul Nye. I live in Walker. Walker is located about 65 miles north of Brainerd and 40 miles south of Bemidji on beautiful Leach Lake. It's a town of about 1,000 people, grows like all tourist town. It grows considerably in the summer. Tourism is our main industry here. A little background on my shop, Backstreet Bicycle Service and Repair. It's the only shop in town, and the closest shop would be Northern Cycle, Park Rapids, 40 miles away, or Northern Cycle's second shop, which is 40 miles away. Park Rapids is 28 miles away. I opened my shop under the name Backstreet Bike and Ski in 1998. We were a full-service bike and ski shop. It was located on the north end of Walker, about a block off Highway 371 and a block from the Heartland State Trail. Interestingly, local people, this is 1998, local people who visited the shop were shocked that I was selling bicycles that were $300 to $400. Some said they paid less than that for their first car. They felt the prices were outrageous. But that slowly began to change as people outside of Walker started coming up to bike our paved trails. We closed the retail shop in 2003 when we lost our lease to the building, and the economy started going south into the great decline of the recession. I did some work in my basement on bikes on and off, but then in 2007, we reopened our shop under the name Backstreet Bicycle Service and Repair, and it's located in our 200 square foot garage attached to our 80-year-old house. We live in a commercial zone, so it wasn't a big deal. It's a block off Main Street. We like to think, and we promote our shop as the smallest bike shop in Minnesota, probably the nation, and I'm not sure, maybe the world, although they have some small ones in Italy, I hear. I no longer sell or rent bicycles or skis. We focus on service and repair with a limited supply of popular cycling products and accessories. Walker is, well, for a long time, they saw themselves, and other people saw the town as primarily a fishing, hunting, snowmobiling resort town. So my observation of that was that's the way the town started, and people were a bit stubborn to change until the internet came along and changed everything. From day one in 1998, I noticed two things in my business when I started. One was the age of the cyclist was much older than I predicted, and two, it was going to take outsiders, cycling tourists, to change the mindset of the town. When I first opened my shop in 1998, for example, my customers were outside of the area. Most were 50 years old and pretty knowledgeable about bicycling. And I began to hear one comment over and over and over again in my shop, and that was, does this town really know what they have here with these trails? We had a group of 30 to 40 cyclists from Winnipeg that come down every year and spend 2 weeks in Walker and bike all the trails around the area. They knew what we had. I knew what we had with the trails. The cyclists, the local cyclists, the few that there were, knew what we had, but somehow the town either didn't know, didn't care, or were just kind of oblivious to it and took it for granted. There are two main trail systems that run through Walker, the Paul Bunyan State Trail and the Heartland State Trail. Paul Bunyan State Trail is a 115-mile paved trail that extends from Brainerd Baxter area to the Bemidji. It's the longest state trail in Minnesota and the longest continuously paved rail to trail in the country. It attracts about 650,000 visitors a year. The Heartland State Trail is a 49-mile trail that connects 6 communities between Park Rapids and Cass Lake. It's one of the first rail-to-trail projects in the country and was established by an act of the Minnesota legislature in 1974. Both the Paul Bunyan and the Heartland Trail connect in Walker and also with other regional trail systems. About 6 miles west of Walker, if you go down the Heartland Trail, it connects to a section that cuts through the Chippewa National Forest for about 8 to 10 miles and comes out just north of Hackensack on the Paul Bunyan Trail. This is the section that local cyclists refer to as the Pyrenees because it has an 8% slope with multiple curves. Beautiful area to bike, pretty remote. In 2006, there was a task force, a business, government, civic leaders, avid cyclists who worked on the development of what we call the Shingabee Connection Trail. And that's one that goes south of Walker and intersects with the Paul Bunyan Trail towards Hackensack. Excuse me, I wish I had a map to show you because it's kind of, there's like everywhere I look in my house there are trails. So once the trails were paved in and around Walker, it was easier for the chamber to show people outside of Walker that it was a great bicycling destination, which was really important because at this time the walleye fishing on Leach Lake had been pretty much decimated and was taking a big decline. So the chamber had to kind of reinvent itself and needed to diversify its tourism focus. I like to think no more putting their minnows in one bucket, so to speak. Maybe some bike tubes, I don't know. In 2008, my shop was awarded the gold level as a bicycle-friendly business by the League of American Bicyclists. Now, here's the cool thing. Out of 88 businesses in the entire nation who applied for this distinction, 11 businesses were from Walker. Get your head around that. 11 businesses in Walker out of 88 in the entire nation. We're talking businesses. That kind of indicates where Walker stands in Minnesota as and the nation as a cycling destination. Additionally, that same year, I believe, Walker earned a distinction as a bicycle-friendly community, which was a complex process, in my opinion, and some of you who received that distinction will know what it takes. We are very fortunate to have a mayor, Jed Shaw, who is an avid cyclist, and he has promoted Walker's vast trail system, both in and around Walker, a lot of other towns, as well as in the Twin Cities. Jed is also an active member of our bike committee and was instrumental in obtaining this bicycle-friendly community distinction. Another key person is a good friend of mine, Simon Whitehead from England. He is the coordinator for Cass County SHIP, which is statewide health improvement partnership. He wrote a SHIP grant for $27,000 to purchase 32 adjustable bikes from Bike Friday to take to 4 school districts in a big 32-foot trailer in Cass County. Simon also raised $9,300 last year to purchase a trishaw that would enable us to take senior citizens out on bike rides and get them out of where they're living or nursing homes or whatever. It's a great program. I believe it was launched by a national group called Cycling Without Age. Simon was also very instrumental in Walker becoming a bronze bicycle-friendly community. So because cycling has increased significantly around Walker, the need for a bike shop is great. However, here's the deal. Walker's a small seasonal tourist town, and like the cliche goes, we roll up the sidewalks and stick them in storage in the winter, which makes it pretty difficult for a business, seasonal business, like a bike shop to survive year-round unless they offer a different service or product other than bicycles. My shop is primarily a bicycle service shop. I don't get a lot of walk-in traffic or people just who want to look at stuff hanging on walls, try out bikes. I focus on 3 things that I think we do pretty well. We perform an annual bicycle tune-up at a very reasonable cost, which is $50, which is probably going to go to about $60 next week. I don't know. We perform on-demand repairs for people visiting the Walker Leach Lake area, and we fix flat tires while you wait, mainly because they're easy and typically not time-consuming, but also because my theory is that a lot of people that have flat tires are tourists that are coming here, and they're on a limited time, and I don't want their bike hanging in my shop, waiting to get a flat tire fix for a week because I don't have room for it, and I want to get them back out on the trail. So we fix them right away. I drop what I'm doing and I fix flats. I think one of the unique things about my shop is I take a time to engage my customers in conversation. I'm kind of a conversationalist, so I like talking, and you can get any discussion you want from bicycles, music, and theology if you hang out our shop, and maybe a little bit of politics too. But I can afford to do this because I don't get a lot of I don't get a lot of walk-in traffic. It's pretty limited. But also many times cycling tourists are in walker to bike. So like I mentioned later, they have to wait to get their bike fixed. And you have to be pretty comfortable with people watching you work and making comments on your work. So I see Walker, future of Walker, as an appealing and popular cycling destination due to the friendliness of the community, gift shops, natural beauty, and its diversity as a business and tourism community. One of the main reasons I keep my shop open, interestingly enough, is so cyclists don't have to drive 30 to 50 miles to get a flat tire fixed. I fix a lot of flat tires. About 70 to 80% of my business comes from my website, which says if I'm home, I'm open, because my wife and I live here. So that means that I'm in the shop sometimes at 9 p.m. on a Sunday night fixing an unexpected flat tire on a child trailer or bike, because grandpa and grandma, who are avid cyclists, get to take a couple of grandkids out for an early Monday morning ride to Dairy Queen, and they notice the night before at 9 o'clock they have a flat tire. Who do we call? Paul and I, the bike guys. So once in a while I get calls about 9 o'clock, and I've worked in the shop with customers till about 10:30 at night. I don't mind it at all because it's a tourist town, so it kind of goes with the territory. So my hours of operation present a small problem because of the inconvenience to me, but it's also convenient for my customers. As Natalie mentioned, you can probably see back here, I'm a professional musician, so sometimes because my performances are in the summer, I have to close the shop early to get to a gig, but I just put a sign out front and invite people, if it's a local gig, to where I'm playing, and they can bring their bike over and I can talk to them during a break, or I put a sign up there with my cell phone number, and they can try, and I try to best accommodate them over the phone. I was in Denver taking a vacation once, and I got a call, and I just talked the person through adjusting their brake through the phone. So I've made it pretty easy for potential customers to find me online. My web domain is WalkerMN Bicycle Shop. So they Google WalkerMN Bicycle Shop and I come up. And that's about it. Thanks for joining me. Stop in at the bike shop, the smallest one in the Minnesota, maybe the nation. Any questions? Natalie's running through some slides there. One we're looking at there was a Ozarks team from University of Texas. I don't know if you can have time to read the caption there, but every year this group makes a tour. There's 90 cyclists. They break them into 3 teams. They go from Austin, Texas to Anchorage, Alaska, biking, and they do it in 70 days, and they have host towns. And we hosted this group, the Ozarks team, last year, summer. And it was just an overnight thing, but they were very impressed. They said it was the first town that they had a big party thrown for them, and the first town that had live music. But it was a lot of fun. Unfortunately, this year they had to cancel because of the pandemic. So that's about it. I do some biking in the winter on my Surrey single speed just because. Put studded tires on, ride around.
Thanks, Paul. What an interesting history of the bike shop in the area in the northern part of Minnesota, Walker, Minnesota. So this was fantastic. Paul's contact information is on the screen here if you are interested in reaching out to him. And as he mentioned in his presentation, he's very available. So that would be as far as responsive to people who have questions and are traveling through this area to by bike, maybe along one of the trails. And there was a question in the chat box, I think, about what the service would be this summer and whether there would be touring cyclists could get access to mechanical work during the summer. In the midst
I got a really good story about that that just happened last week. And if you go to my Facebook page, you probably see it, but I had a couple from Minneapolis and they called me from Bacchus, which is 30 miles south. And I had just closed 10 minutes earlier and he blew out 6 spokes. So he told me where he was and I said, I can be there in a half hour. So my wife went down, we grabbed a DQ and drove down there and we put our masks on, they put theirs on, threw the bike on the back of the car and went back and I worked for a couple hours fixing the spokes. They were riding from Brainerd to Bemidji and then back again. So I told him, keep in touch with me. And when he came through the next day or whatever, 2 days later I wanted to check his wheel. And he called me about 6 miles out when he's coming in from Brainerd, Bemidji, blew out 2 more spokes. I didn't have a wheel in stock, so I said, look, take my wheel off my bike and ride down there. And they had to come back up for business on Thursday. So my wife and I are going to drive down to Brainerd to pick up the wheel, exchange the one. And I fixed his wheel here. But, you know, this is a tourism community, and I'm a one-person shop. I have the liberty to do that. So I enjoy doing that, and I don't soak people because, you know, it's just not cool. I should say I don't need this as an income. I don't need to rely on my bike shop. I do it because it's mental therapy and it's good for the community too. So I can kind of twist the rules. I don't look at it so much. I make money on it, but I don't look at it so much as a business that I need to survive on. So it's more of a convenience for people who are cycling here, because I'm afraid if I close down, I don't know who would do it because, you know, there's, like I said, about the seasonal nature of it.
Thanks, Paul. What a fabulous offering that you have in Walker, Minnesota. And to all the participants that are joining today, hopefully you learned a little bit about the history of the area and about the bike shop and the culture of places outside of the metro. And in particular, today we're shining a spotlight on Walker, Minnesota. And in a moment here, I will introduce our other speaker today, because we're going to shine a spotlight also on Fergus Falls today. So thank you for your questions. Thank you for the presentation, Paul. This was fantastic information, and we'll continue the dialogue throughout the webinar today. I'm going to move on to shine a spotlight here on Gene Bowman from Fergus Falls here in just a moment. I'll give a brief intro. If you do have questions, feel free to enter them into the chat box, and we'll pause for questions after Jean's done with her presentation, and we'll wrap up the webinar today with some questions and answers for both speakers. And the BikeMN staff is on the line today as well. So just if there's some questions you have for us related to bike service and repair, statewide here in Minnesota, you know, this topic is interesting, and we'd like to make sure that we bring on some speakers that can help share some ideas and give you a little sneak peek about what's happening with the culture in greater Minnesota related to biking here during the season. So our next speaker today, I am really excited to introduce to you Jean Bowman. She is in Fergus Falls with Visit Fergus Falls. And there's a few people from Southern Minnesota on the call today. So I'll mention that she did grow up in Owatonna and lived in Minneapolis. Welcome, Jean. She's the executive director of Visit Fergus Falls and a board member of Pedal Fergus Falls, a local bike walk advocacy organization out in West Central Minnesota. So also Central Lakes Trail marketing team member, and she's been promoting bicycling for 17 years. So she's going to discuss a little bit about the collaborative efforts in Fergus Falls to identify what the needs are of the cyclists, obviously with a focus on tourism and complement to our other speaker who spoke about the bike, more of the bike shop aspect of service and repair. So we're thrilled to have Jean join today. Welcome, Jean Bowman from Fergus Falls.
Super, thanks, Natalie. Before I start talking about Fergus Falls, Paul, your story is amazing, and you're dream shop owner for any tourism destination. And it reminds me of being through another town who I shall not name. And I walked in, I needed a break, and they had a sign that said water was for customers only, or you had to buy ice or something like that, and you couldn't use the restrooms. And I thought, now that's just a great example of what not to do. So thanks for sharing with us what it means to be a partner. And I am representing the tourism business, which is like your chamber. And the only thing I would say about how quickly you provide repair service is if you slow down a little bit, you might sort of encourage those visitors to stay in town a little longer and spend some more money, which is what we're all about. So finding that balance, and I'm sure they appreciate your great service. All right, so I'm going to start by just giving you a little bit of background about me. As Natalie said, I did grow up in Owatonna, but I've been in Fergus Falls for 17 years, and that picture is me with my first real bike. I just started biking 7 years ago. My husband gave me that bike for Mother's Day. I have been learning about biking, and I try to stay mostly on the trails because I'm not very brave about my ability to ride in traffic. We lived in Robbinsdale for 17 years, and I wouldn't have dreamed of biking there. It was just too terrifying for me. And I wanted to take a TS 101 skills class and was registered for that last year in Fergus Falls, but I was the only person signed up, so we had to cancel it. So that's on my short list of things to do here soon. Next slide, please, Natalie. Okay, so a little bit about the biking infrastructure here in Fergus Falls. It's really just been within the last 10 years that our city started really paying attention to the cyclist and what their needs were. But now we have several miles of sharrows and bike lanes in town, and we're working on wayfinding. In fact, this Monday night, our city, last 2 nights ago, our city approved moving forward with a bike pedestrian plan. We didn't have one, we don't have one, and we've long been advocating for that. So we're really happy that that is going to be going forward. Natalie mentioned that we are on the Central Lakes Trail. In fact, we like to say that the Central Lakes Trail starts here, and it goes 55 miles to the southeast to Osakis, where it connects to the Lake Wobegon Trail. It's also a rail bank. The DNR owns and manages that space, and we're really pleased to have that. We'll talk a little bit more about repair stations later. We're starting with some mountain bike track here in town, which the local community really appreciates. The picture here is of some really cool sculptural bike racks that we have, and we have 8 of this style in town, led by our Pedal Fergus Falls group. And Wayne developed a grant for, I'll tell you about Wayne later. He developed a grant with Lake Region Arts Council for these decorative racks. And I don't know if you can see very well in the picture, but that green one is actually tall grass prairie, and the orange one is butterflies. So this is a picture from the dedication of these bike racks last year at our library. And the group Pedal Fergus Falls gets these purchased, and then we gift them to the city and keep them maintained for us. Next slide, please. All right, here we're going to talk about the people behind the Fergus Falls cycling community. And Wayne Hurley is at the top of my list, and I know he's on today's webinar. He's a transportation planner with West Central Initiative, and he is a great bicycle advocate. In fact, it was 2006 when BikeMN awarded him with the Bike Friendly Champion Award, and so he's really at the top of my list. And I already gave him permission to chime in here and correct me or answer questions that are beyond my pay grade. So we're really pleased to have Wayne here with us. The photo here on your screen is our mayor. That's Mayor Ben Shire, and he is a bike champion as well. He and his wife own a pizza and beer place. So if you're spotting on my shelf behind me a beer, it's on this side, a beer growler, that's from the mayor's bar. He has 5 kids who are senior in high school and on down. So he's a real bike champion. We've got a couple of Daves, Crazy Dave and Dr. Dave, who've both ridden their bikes across the United States and also very passionate and energetic about cycling. And we have 18 bicycle-friendly bikes, so just a few more than Walker, but Not more per capita, but we are in that top 10 list of nationwide communities for bike-friendly businesses, and we're very proud of that. Next slide, please. All right, so you know how sometimes there are things when you've got lots of people doing their thing and not communicating, and where are you missing things and where are you overlapping? Not the case with biking in Fergus Falls, because we have so many groups doing their little piece of bicycle advocacy and development that we communicate and overlap, and we serve on each other's groups, that we just works really well. So Pedal Fergus Falls is our bike advocacy group, and I'm on that board, and we really look at what it takes to, what Fergus Falls needs to be a friendly community. We are one of 7 chapters of BikeMN, so we really appreciate that partnership. And our funding really comes from our memberships, some grants, and business donations. We've got a great support from our business community. And one of the things that Wayne just started with Pedal Fergus Falls is a Facebook post that's only been up, and somebody donated bicycles to give away for Bike Month. And because we couldn't have an event, we're doing it all virtually on Facebook. And in that time, since May 13th, we've had reached 10,000 people and had 131 shares. So we've got a lot of traction, if you will, on our Facebook page. And if you want to win a bike, I invite you to like our page and follow there. The picture on your screen is a lot of our bike community from our 30 days of biking kickoff a couple of years ago. One of the partners here I want to really call out is Ottertail County. Ottertail County is a huge county, but we've got a really progressive group of commissioners, and they have a bike pedestrian plan that's part of their transportation plan. So they're helping to trail connections, because the trail kind of ends here in Fergus Falls, and we'd really love to someday connect to the Heartland Trail. I know there are a lot of gaps, but the current project is a Pelican to Pelican Rapids to Perham Trail development, and that runs along the east to west side of the north. No, it runs east to west on the north side of Ottertail County. Get my mapping right there. So hopefully we'll someday connect up to that, and eventually we'll all be one big loop cycling in central Minnesota. All right, next slide, please. I gotta make these chats not pop up in my screen. Sorry about that. All right. We also host many bike tours through Fergus Falls, like the Ozark group. That the first bullet there, those are all local bike events that are mostly put on and hosted by our Pedal Fergus Falls group. We've hosted the BikeMS here since 2007. They certainly don't come repeatedly, but in the last 13 years, they've come 5 times. This picture is our group of volunteers, and I'm just so happy with the support from our community, whether it's our city staff, our Kiwanis, Rotary. We get great volunteer participation when we host these groups. One of the stories from a bike tram year, in fact, it was the last year we had them here, one of the riders was brushing her teeth before departing in the morning, and her tent mates thought they were being really helpful, and they threw her bag onto this truck, or a truck like it, and the truck took off, and she came back only to find not only on, but her cycling shoes were in it. So one of our volunteers took the shoes off her own feet, gave them to this rider, and she got them back in the mail a couple days later. But it's kind of like taking the shirt off your back. You give someone the shirt off your back. She took the shoes off. Our volunteers are really, they've got a big heart. This year we're supposed to have BAM, the Bicycling Around Minnesota group, was going to be here this summer 2020, but they have also canceled. They will be back next year though, so we'll be looking forward to having them here. Rail Trails 100, that's the Central Lakes event. It's 100 miles of trail rides from Fergus Falls down to St. Joseph, Minnesota. That's scheduled for August 1st this year, and so far we're still planning to hold it. We haven't canceled yet, but we'll be looking at that here in the next week or so. Next slide, please. So we do get a lot of solo bikers or through cyclists. For cycling, Northern Tier Route has an alternate track. I mean, the primary route goes north and through the Heartland area. But if people want to just get from west to east and get down to the Twin Cities, they do bring them through the Fergus Falls. Really, it takes, you know, from an hour to get from, well, that's driving, sorry. If somebody leaves Fargo in the morning on their bike, they're going to be here by lunchtime. So we work to have good signage, and we know we need some improvement on that, but that's sort of next in our things to do. But camping, food, lodging, and of course, bicycle repair. And this slide tells the connection of our trail with the Lake Wobegon Trail. And they connect in Osakis, which is 55 miles from here. And until 2007, I think it is, these trails lacked about, say, 3 miles. And I'm going to confuse that with the Saintly 7, that's down in St. Joseph. So pardon me if I'm wrong on that. But you can see there that we've got one of our volunteers driving the Golden Spike, just like they did with the railroads back in the day. And of course, Mr. Lake Wobegon himself, Garrison Keeler, made himself available for the day. So that was a great celebration. Because we do get through cyclists, we're really particular about where we put our bike repair stations. And the first one we put in was at our Fergus Falls Library, because that's right in the middle of town. So not only is it accessible for residents, but we knew that would be sort of our de facto trailhead until many years later when the DNR would build a trailhead right at the Central Lakes Trail on Highway 210. Okay, next slide, please. All right, so this is the model of the repair stations that we have in town, and we've got 7 of them, and they're even findable on a Google map, and they're defined. And again, our city does the maintenance and installation of these, and our Pedal Fergus Falls and private partners and donors help to pay for those. So in fact, Wayne just submitted a grant for, I think, 7 or 8 more, and we'll know at the end of June if we've got some more money so that we can put those in. Next slide. So we only have one bricks and mortar bike shop in town, and it's the Central Lake Cycle. And I made a trip out there, and I stop in frequently just as a cyclist to pick up things and accessories for myself and for my family. But I went out to really interview Clark, and he's the manager, and he's a great partner with our community when it comes to bike events. They're really only 12 years old, and he's got a small staff. And when he bulks up to 4 people, that's definitely in the summertime. He's about a mile block off of the Central Lakes Trail, and he gets about half of his customers are those through cyclists or those visitors like Paul serves. And one of the things that is a bike-friendly business since 2015, and Clark just reapplied for his service to continue, or his bike-friendly business dedication. So we are hopeful to hear back soon that he is been awarded that again. One of the fun stories about Clark's business is when we were hosting our Rail Trails 100 bike ride a couple of years ago. So part of that ride is that riders actually start in St. Joseph, and we load their bikes onto a big bike trailer, and then they ride a coach bus up to Fergus Falls, and their bikes come up on the trailer. We didn't realize one of the riders had carbon components on her bicycle, which of course are very fragile, and she got up here and her bike, one of her tires was just destroyed. We couldn't ride at all. And so Clark provided a tire. We bought that on behalf of our events, and he put it on her bike, and she rode. I think she only made it about halfway, and she was just too frustrated with the whole day. But he was just right there at 7:30 in the day fixing things and being available for our rider and providing that great customer service that's so important to our visitors. Let's see, next slide. How am I doing on time here? Oh, I'm talking a lot. Oh, good, we're at the end. I really just wanted to thank you and leave you with a couple of photos here. These are crazy bicyclists. Up in the right hand is Dave, our crazy bike guy, and he lives in Fergus Falls. Dave is the student life director out at our college, so we're really glad to have his energy. And in the lower left, you'll see Jörg Richter. And Jörg is a through cyclist from Germany. And he came through Fergus Falls in 2018 as a part of a cross-country ride. And I think Wayne and another bike person on him as they were headed out to lunch, and they stopped and treated Jörg to lunch and heard his story. And he was supposed to come back this summer as well, but he's had to put that on hold for another year. So we love having these cyclists. They're entertaining, and if we capture them, we try to treat them to lunch and tell them a little bit about our story and listen to their story. So I thank you all for listening to my story.
Thanks, Jean. It's great to hear a little bit more about Fergus Falls. I know sometimes, we feature you quite a bit, and that's all right. You're doing some really amazing things. And of course, today we're talking about bike service and repair. So thanks for sharing about the bike repair stations, which are more of a self-service type of a model, and also sharing a little bit about your local bike shop to share that connection with the trail for touring cyclists, as well as people who are community members in Fergus Falls that may need repair and service. So we have a couple of questions that have popped up in the chat box during your presentation. I know there was some questions about lodging and travel and things related to this summer. So I'm going to pause for just a moment here to take any questions that people might have and catch up a little bit from the chat box. So one person, Beth Kolestad here, was asking about, do you have a location of bike repair stations on any maps or websites? Maybe this is related to the Saris bike repair stations that you were mentioning, Jean. Was that a map that maybe Jake put together, or something that you guys have online that you might like to share?
No, I'm going to see if Wayne will chime in on that one. Because I know we've got them on, and we don't have them on a printed map, but that's something that's in the works, but they might be available online. You say,
I'll track down the website and I'll throw it in the chat.
Okay, thank you.
Walker does have some, I think we have 2 or 3 at the trailheads.
And I would just address the lodge, and I forget who asked that, but in Fergus Falls, all our hotels have been open the whole time during the coronavirus. I know in some communities they have closed some hotels, but all the ones in Fergus are open. Resorts in Minnesota are allowed to open. In fact, our family is like going to a resort in Paul's neck of the woods. So as long as it's cabin camping, that's perfectly fine, but what's not open are their common areas. So if a resort has a swimming pool, for example, or a game room, those spaces aren't usable. But they are open for business. I know they could use the business. So if you're thinking about visiting central Minnesota this summer, please come on up.
Wonderful. Thanks for sharing that. And I see that Wayne put a Google link to the map in the chat box, so you can look in there and click on that if you'd like to look at that.
Thanks, Wayne.
Yeah, thanks, Wayne. And then Wayne, did you want to share anything else, or Jean, for that matter, just a little bit more about Pedal Fergus Falls and how you guys are, organized or connected? There was a question about whether or not it was nonprofit, and I see that was already answered in the chat box, but I don't know if you guys wanted to just mention anything more about that group, how you organized, how you're operating. I know you've come a long way since, in the last 5 years or so.
I'll let Wayne answer that, because he's an officer and I'm just a member.
Yeah, I'll give like a 30-second history on it. So the group started actually as a committee that was looking into applying for bike-friendly community status. And so this group of people got together to look at that. We applied. First time we applied, we didn't get any award at all. So but we got the feedback report from the league, which was amazingly helpful. And if you're in a community, if you've not applied for bike-friendly community status, the league sends you a feedback report that has basically a roadmap of how to become bike-friendly, and so it's really, really helpful. So even if you don't think you're ready, go ahead and apply, because you're going to get this feedback report that'll be really helpful to move forward. So we did that, and then as things evolved and we kept trying to kind of implement the things in that plan, Pedal Fergus Falls kind of just evolved into its own group. Eventually we formed a board of directors and became a chapter of BikeMN. And so today we have a board of 7 members, and have a great relationship with the Bicycle Alliance of Minnesota. I cannot say enough good things about our relationship with BikeMN and the staff there. So if you're in a community where you've got a group of people that are working on bike-friendly sorts of things, definitely talk to BikeMN, and a lot of you I know are. But if you have the opportunity to look into forming a chapter, I would highly recommend it, because we've really had I think a mutually beneficial relationship. But I know I've really appreciated all the work that the staff there have done to help us out with a lot of things.
Thank you so much for that, Wayne. And I'm glad that you let me put you on the spot there for a second, just to talk about Pedal Fergus Falls and the bicycle friendly community piece, because when we're talking about bike shop and bike service and repair in smaller towns, greater Minnesota, where, what does that look like? Who is coming through town? Is it local community members, or is it tourism folks, bike tourists that are coming across Minnesota here? These different things that are offerings that you have in your small towns in greater Minnesota, whether it's the bike repair stations or bike shops, or, maybe service and repair happening in other ways. Calling Paul Nye at 9 p.m. on a Sunday evening. This is an amazing bike culture in greater Minnesota. And I'm so thrilled to hear the stories from Walker and Fergus Falls today. And, I know we kind of showcase and shine the spotlight on one community per month. And today we're shining the spotlight on 2 communities. So thanks for sharing the time and your stories today. So thank you so much. I want to pause for just a moment, and I'm going to put Dorian Greeley on the spot here to shine the spotlight on him to talk just briefly in connection with what Wayne was sharing, and how some of these things come together as the state of Minnesota here, and how bicycle friendly we are, and one of the offerings that that he can just speak briefly about. So Dorian, did you want to talk just a little bit about the chapters?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I did put a short answer in the chat box about what a chapter is. And really a chapter of BikeMN is simply, you could think of it as a local committee of the BikeMN board of directors that shares a similar mission of education, advocacy, and working for a more biking and walking friendly community. We do not charge an administrative fee, and we actually are willing to share membership revenue with, with Pedal Fergus Falls or Bike Cannon Falls or We Bike Rochester, and for people who sign up and check that. So, it's not a lot of money, but what it really helps with is when you are raising money and you go to a local store and they say, or a local philanthropist, and they say, is your organization a nonprofit, and is it tax deductible? If you're a chapter of BikeMN, you can say yes. So we hold the money in a separate account. And I also, many of you are probably interested in what happened at the legislative session, and I'd be happy to just say, or I'm unhappy to say, pretty much nothing related to bicycling and walking. The good news is that a top priority for their June special session is to pass a bonding bill, and that very likely will include money for trail projects around the state, but it'll also include money for Safe Routes to School grants via MnDOT. So that's, if there are other questions, pop them in the chat box, or go ahead and unmute yourself and ask.
I think someone should donate a bike to Governor Tim Walz.
You know what? Governor Tim Walz rides a carbon fiber bike with Ultegra parts. So Governor Tim Walz rides a $3,000 or $4,000 bicycle, and he actually has a couple.
Didn't know that.
He's ridden the Mankato River Ramble.
Nice.
That's great. I'm drinking out of my Mankato River Ramble mug as we speak and zoom in. So there's seems to be a connection across all these different topics today, including coffee and bikes and cool trails that go through Greater Minnesota. So thanks.
So I won 2 registrations to this year's Mankato River Ramble. So I may do that if it's still held. Is that in the fall?
It is the first Sunday in October. And both we've canceled the Tour of Saints. Both the St. Paul Classic and the Mankato River Ramble are on hold. But you know, everything that we're reading looks like the pandemic has a good chance of rebounding in the fall. So you know, we may do a virtual event. And use sponsor money for prizes like you guys have been doing.
Okay, thanks for that update.
Yeah, thanks for the question, Jean, and for sharing a little bit more about that, Dorian. You know, we have almost all of our BikeMN staff is on the line today on this webinar to just remind you how strong of a support network we have statewide in Minnesota. And as Wayne mentioned too, you know, we have a great partnership with Untitled Fergus Falls and the folks in Walker and other communities across the state doing bicycle friendly work and walk friendly work. And you may have heard recently about our walk, bike, fun distance learning as well for the youth. And so there's some really great opportunities to get connected and get the support you need to deliver these things in Greater Minnesota and other parts in the state. So, you know, you heard a little bit about the stories in Walker, Minnesota and Fergus Falls, Minnesota today related to bike service and repair. And I know we have participants today from all across the state, and you may be joining today and already have a bike shop in your community that's an essential business that's functioning during the COVID-19 global pandemic, or maybe you are trying to figure out how to get some type of offering started in your community. And I think, you know, just for a moment here, I'm going to put the speakers on the spot, if you will let me do so. If there's anything that you, either Jean or Paul, would like to share about what are some of the, you know, any tips you have for people who are thinking about offering some type of bike service or repair in their town, and you know, what's a good way to get started, and what things might they consider as far as what type of repairs and service they offer. I know, Paul, you mentioned fixing a flat was a big one for you guys. So
I'd either suggest look at your demographic in your town, start with deep pockets or start small. Because I'm loving what I'm doing now. When I'm at retail shop, it was big time stress. And my friend Todd Williams of Northern Cycle, we both started our shops in 1998 the same time, and not either one not knowing what the other one was doing a shop, but we didn't know each other before then. He opened his second shop maybe 4 years ago, and he was a CPA. I closed my shop and I was a journalist. So that's the joke.
I think the only thing I would add is just, you know, I'm not in the trenches every day like Paul is, but Wayne let me know that there's another guy in town who does bike repair, and I didn't even know it. So
yeah,
it is going to open a bike shop. Be sure you communicate with those organizations in your community who are connected to cyclists so that they can help you get the word out, whether it's through Facebook or, you know, we worked on claiming Google pages and sharing reviews and photos. People could find you if they don't know the name of your bike shop, to Google it, and they're just saying bike repair in Fergus Falls. We want it to pop up in Google. So we help our businesses of all sorts with that kind of thing. So just be sure to reach out to your local chamber or visitors bureau for that partnership and relationship.
And just the other thing I would add too is that a lot of the stuff that I've learned from mistakes I made as a retail shop, you know, starting small instead of big. But I think my first year in business, I spent 20 grand in advertising, And after being 4 years in business, I moved my shop downtown from our other location. And I had locals coming in and said, I didn't know there was a bike shop in town. You know, I mean, you talk about, I've been spending 20 grand a year advertising and you don't even know there's a bike shop in town. So I spend zero, my website, and I have business cards, and I'm a chamber member, and I don't spend any other money advertising. And I'm doing just fine. Web domain, that's the key. My web people said we should pick a name of your shop, like Backstreet Bike, put that in your web domain. Nobody's going to Google that. Nobody's going to know what that is. So I figured I want to make it as easy as possible for tourists coming in. So small, and find out what people need. You know, flats are a huge thing. I stock like 200-300 tires and probably 400 or 500 tubes. So, because I know that's what people are going to come for. So.
Thanks, Paul. Those are great tips for people thinking about doing offering some type of bike service and repair. And I know, you know, at this time right now, people are really wanting to get out and get moving, and biking and walking is an excellent way for, you know, not only physical health, but mental health just during this time. And so I know you mentioned last week as we were trying to prepare for this webinar that you were getting really busy in Walker, and that was wonderful news to hear. So as even just already the weather's getting nicer, it's getting warmer, and it's getting a little bit more inviting to you know, people who would like to get out there and get on their bike. And to you know, if you're wanting to purchase a new bike, I mentioned that there is the bike shops are essential businesses. That was part of the bike advocacy this year that that we helped to establish. So the bike shops are open and available to you know, for you to purchase a bike or to get your repairs and get geared up for the season. So Dorian, did you want to add any closing comments here before we wrap up the webinar? I know we've you know, last month we had a little bit more of a roundtable around COVID and some of the things that we were doing and just checking in with how people are doing. And I've mentioned that we have the, you know, BikeMN staff on here too to support you through all of this. But just wanted to, you know, give Dorian a moment here if you wanted to share anything else just in closing today.
Well, you know, if you've got an extra 4 minutes, I posted a 4-minute video about what BikeMN's been up to this year on our Facebook page. Make sure that you, and I see there's a couple teachers on the line, make sure that you share with teachers and families that the Walk Bike Fun at-home lessons are all posted on our website in Somali, Hmong, Spanish, and English. So we're trying to accommodate as many people as we can. And I think I just want to close with a statement that please remember that you know, there's certainly some bumps along the road, but I think what we're doing is going to be more important than ever. Than it has been in the past. There's been a lot of writing about how important bike commuting is going to be in the urban areas. And Maya and I have been, Maya, our communications manager, and I have been talking about doing a blog post that says, you know, biking and walking is not just important in the urban core. It's very important in Walker, Minnesota, and Rochester, Minnesota, and Fergus Falls, and maybe not exactly for the same reasons, but it's a critical part of all of every community everywhere in Minnesota. So think of it that way, and think of what you're doing as being more important than ever before.
Thanks, Brian.
Thanks, Dorian. And thank you to the speakers today, Gene Bowman from Fergus Falls and Paul Nye from Walker. Thanks for sharing your stories and your links and all the information that you shared with us today. We're at time here, and I'll close it out. Thank you so much to all the participants who were on the webinar today. And we'll be sharing the link for the replay for anyone who would like to hear the story again or share with others. So join us again in June. Thanks, everyone. Have a wonderful day.
Thanks.